I've got a history with candy, and it's shaped my relationship with sweets. Learn how to normalize and neutralize desserts for you and your family in today's episode. You're listening to The Nourished Child, episode number 123, and I'm Jill Castle, your host. This is a show about feeding kids, nourishing them, and raising healthy eaters inside and out. Today on the show, it's just me. And we're talking about Halloween candy, a relationship with sweets, some of the research involved in being too controlling or restrictive with sweets, and what you can do instead. I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. We're talking about candy and sweets. And when I look around on Instagram and social media, that's about all I see is information about how to manage candy and sweets and desserts and all those yummy goody things for kids. We are, at the time of this recording, which is in early November, on the heels of Halloween, and this topic always comes up every year. I've been doing my business for over 12 years now, and it never fails. This time of year, we're talking about how to manage, air quotes, manage sweets, what to do when our kids want so many sweets, and I thought this would be a good time to just sort of touch base on a few things in that area. Before I get going, though, just want to remind you, I had a great interview with Charlotte Markey in the last episode, which was all about the body image for girls. She is the author of the Body Image book for girls, and she's very informative in that area. I hope you were able to listen to that show, and if not, don't hesitate. You know, if you've got a daughter in the range of 8 to 14, 15, 16, this is a must listen for you. Other news, I have finished up a new e-guide called Parenting Food 101. It is available on my website, thenourishedchild.com. You can get your copy of that. And the Smart Mom's Guide to Healthy Snacking. Thank you so much for all of you who have emailed me and volunteered to be a part of Team Smart Mom. I will be finishing up my edits. I'm actually finishing up the references, which are the hardest part for me. It's the least favorite part of writing for me, is getting the formatting of the references down pat. But I know that that is so important for you as a reader to understand that this is not just my opinion that I'm sharing, although there is a lot of my expertise and experience laced throughout the book, but it's not just my opinions and experience. There is a backbone of research to this book. So I want to make sure that you understand that and have the resources you need should you want to explore some of that research. I'm also working on the appendix, which, for the first time, I am doing a few more recipes in this book than I normally do. As many of you know, I'm not a baker or a cook. I am very much a speedy, quick, easy family cook. Oftentimes sort of making things up as I go and not following recipes, but I did tap into my robust circle of colleagues to gather some of their recipes, which I have so many colleagues who are so talented in their recipe design and creation. So I tapped into about 15 of those. So I've got 15 very kid-friendly snack recipes coming in the book, and I'm in the process of finishing up formatting those. And then everything goes off to the editor to do a formal editing of the book. And after that, hopefully we will be well on our way. I'm formatting this book myself this time, so that will take me a little bit of time, but hopefully this will be out by the holidays. But if not, I will most definitely have it out at the first of the year. If you are not part of my newsletter, which goes out every Monday, and it is called The Munch, please sign up. I'll include a link in the show notes whereby you can get my new e-guide or my new printable download called 4 Mealtime Mistakes You Don't Want to Make. And when you opt in for that download, you'll be able to be on my newsletter list and get all the topics that I talk about and write about on my Monday morning newsletter. Okay, so today I thought we're talking about candy and we're talking about sweets, and I thought, when my kids were younger, what did I do? I'm sort of in that phase now and, entering my mid-50s, and I'm starting to reflect back on what I did when. And, I did not manage Halloween candy the same way throughout their entire childhood. I managed it differently, and it was really related to how old they were and what their maturity level was and what my goals were in terms of helping them navigate sweets. So I was kind of going down memory lane and thinking about what did I do when they were really young, like toddlers and preschoolers and kindergartners. And what I did was I had control of the candy. I put it up high on top of the refrigerator and I pulled it down at snack time or at designated times that I wanted to allow them to have sweets. Now, when I pulled it down, I let them pick what sweets they wanted out of the candy bowl. But I had 4 kids. I dumped everything in one bowl. We all shared it. It sat up high in the kitchen somewhere where the children couldn't access it on their own. And I was in full control of that candy. And I didn't eliminate it. We had it quite a bit. And I can't remember the length of time that I allowed or that we had candy available, probably weeks to a month or two. I do remember eating a lot of it myself, and we're going to get into that in a second in this show. But I remember being just as excited as they were to have all that candy in a big bowl in the kitchen. But I had the control of it when they were very young. And then we moved into those school age years where they were, around age 8 to 12, elementary students to middle school students. And they had the candy. They were in charge of the candy. They had their Halloween bag of candy in their room, stored under their bed, in a drawer, in the closet. I did not have control of that candy. I very much believed, this is yours. You can do what you want with it for the week. You want to eat it all, then eat it all. Because I did believe that there was a valuable lesson when kids overeat sweets to be learned. And, interestingly, the personality of my children, some would save their candy for a full year to the next Halloween. They just liked to have it, and they liked knowing it was in their room, that they could have it whenever they wanted it, but they didn't gorge on it or eat it all. And then I had other children who would eat every last piece of candy in the candy bag, in the Halloween bag. So the personality of my children really sort of governed how they reacted and responded and managed their own individual candy bags. But after about a week, or maybe even 10 days, I would say, you know what? We've had the candy. Let's pull it all together. And I would accumulate a lot of it in a bowl that was there for the whole family. And like I said, some of the kids didn't have any to contribute to the bowl because they'd eaten everything within the week. And other kids had lots. And I remember having one discussion where one of my children didn't want to put it in the bowl because she was the only one that had any candy left. So that point, I remember saying, well, I recognized that she was managing it on her own and not eating candy excessively. So I just let her keep that bag of candy. And she has been the child that never eats all of that candy. It gets stale. And we get to a point where I've said in the past, this is gross. It's old. It's stale. Let's toss it. And that's what we do. Then as they got even older into their teenage years, that age where they're still trick-or-treating, but they're kind of aging out of Halloween, I just figured it's theirs. It's their candy to manage. And again, I believe there's a really valuable lesson in figuring out how to manage abundance, whether it's candy, whether it's money, whether it's clothing. There's value in managing abundance. And sometimes telling our kids how to manage it is less effective than actually giving them the opportunity to manage it and helping them and guiding them as we can without being too intrusive. Kids change a lot. Their nutrition needs, eating habits, and food preferences do too. So much so, it can be hard to keep up. The Nourished Child, a website designed for parents who want more nutrition education, helps parents like you get crystal clear on raising good eaters. We've cracked the code on nourishing the whole child, whether you're raising a baby, a teen, or a child with health concerns. Our nutrition school and parent education programs help you get the inside scoop on food and nutrients, positive food parenting, and building self-motivated, autonomous kids who are good eaters. Visit thenourishedchild.com today. So now I want to read an excerpt because I do have a history. I sort of teased that before I started this show. I do have a history with candy, and I want to read an excerpt that I wrote for U.S. News and World Report, and then I posted on my blog as well. And I'll include the link in the show notes, jillcastle.com/123 for episode number 123. But I titled this A History with Sweets. So let me just read a little bit of this to you. When my kids were younger, I thought about how I would handle sweets. I actually had a goal in mind. I wanted my kids to walk by the candy jar. I wanted them to see and acknowledge treats and walk on by. I didn't want them to dig in every time they walked by a plate of cookies or a tray of brownies. I didn't want them to stuff their faces at a party or while they trekked door to door on Halloween. I didn't want them to do this because I did that when I was a kid. My family lived on a food budget in the 1970s. My mom, like me, cooked most dinners and packed our lunches for school. She had a structure with mealtime, and meals were a priority in our home. I'm not very different from my mom in this respect. My mom bought very few sweets. She'd buy one package of cookies each week, and rarely any candy, ice cream, or other sweet treats. A container of frozen orange juice for Sunday morning breakfast after church and a weekly box of sugary cereal were always on the grocery list. She preferred cooking over baking and would make homemade sweets and desserts for parties and holidays. Her special coffee cake at Christmas, banana bread, homemade chocolate eclairs, and divinity were irresistible, literally. My 3 siblings and I routinely ate the weekly package of cookies within days, sometimes in just one day. That same fate happened to the homemade desserts. Gone, almost as soon as they were made. As an adult who can look back on my own childhood experiences and see it through the lens of a pediatric dietitian, I see where my mom might have done things differently. My mom, like many mothers across the country, didn't know what she didn't know, and she did the best she could with the knowledge she had. She didn't understand the psychological effect food scarcity or restriction can have on children. Here's what I mean. The rare appearance of sweets in my childhood drove me to focus on them more, seek them out, and go overboard when I succeeded in getting them. The strategy of, I don't have any desserts in the house, or I don't make any desserts in the house, increased a desire for sweets rather than a dislike or a moderate view of them. This isn't just my observation on my own experience. There's actually scientific evidence for this. Food restriction, particularly with sweets and treats, has an interesting effect on children. An article in 1999, which I recognize is 20 years ago, showed actually that preschoolers who were restricted from eating high-fat, high-sugar foods experienced changes in their behavior, selection of, and eating of the restricted food. Translated, they were more responsive to the restricted food. They selected the restricted food, which were sweets, when they could, and ate more of it when the opportunity arose. Other studies show that food restriction may lead to higher weights and poor eating habits. A 2014 study teased out more details about food restriction. Not only did children who experienced it eat more of the restricted food when they could, they were categorized as highly responsive to these foods, they also had more conversations and questions about them. Furthermore, children who had low self-control or who had a big appetite were more susceptible to the negative effects of food restriction, such as being highly reactive to them and eating more of those foods that were restricted. So in short, restriction may not promote moderate food consumption in some children. Rather, it can encourage the desire for those foods. So as an adult and a pediatric nutritionist, I know that eliminating or restricting sweets and tightly controlling them may foster a desire for them, like it did for me. So as you can see, the outcomes when you restrict or control sweets and treats and desserts too much can lead to your child obsessing or being overly focused on those foods. Sweets in and of themselves or candy become special and triggered. And this can lead kids to be more responsive, more engaged, more preoccupied with them. What I think is interesting is if you have a child who has a big appetite or a child with low self-control. And for those of you out there who might have a child with ADHD or autism, we know that impulsivity and low self-control can be part of that condition. These children are more susceptible and more reactive to those foods that you're restricting. And again, you might be restricting chips, so it could be chips that your child's reacting to. But for the most part, in my experience, most of us are controlling and restricting sugar or foods with lots of sugar. So what can you do instead? So I have a couple of just quick pieces of advice. And number one is to normalize sweets. So how do you normalize sweets and treats? You allow them to show up routinely in your meal plan, in your snack plan. You allow them to be part of daily life or weekly life, however you decide to balance them. To normalize them allows them to not be triggering or something that kids only see with irregularity. So sweets, normalizing them involves making them more predictable, making them part of mealtime, not getting weird or freaking out whenever your child has too much of it. Using sort of those times where, first off, allowing your child to enjoy sweets when they do have them, I think is really important, and acknowledging to your child that, these foods taste great. They're delicious. I happen to like them too. But also giving your child the tools to understand where they show up and when they show up in your regular eating plan. Are they part of hump day on Wednesdays? For my kids, some of you have heard this story before, but during the school week, I didn't pack sweets in their lunchbox. Occasionally I did, but not regularly. We had Friday after school, which was always an ice cream stop or a frozen yogurt stop after school. That was our regular, during the school week, our regular sweet that we looked forward to. So normalizing sweets, acknowledging that they're yummy and delicious, making them part of the plan, allowing your child to know when they're showing up, in one sense, making them predictable in the schedule, really can help normalize sweets, because ultimately we don't want sweets to be more important than fruits and vegetables and whole grains and protein and dairy or non-dairy substitutes. We want sweets and treats to sort of be on the level playing field in terms of our psychological response. Now, I know that they're not equal from a nutrition standpoint, but from a psychological responsiveness, we do want them to sort of be part of just food, the category of food. We also want to neutralize them. So we don't want to use sweets to motivate eating behavior. So for example, we don't want to use sweets to bribe our kids to eat vegetables. That actually changes the hierarchy of vegetables and sweets. It puts sweets up on the pedestal and vegetables down low or less important, less desirable. We don't want to create a hierarchy with sweets and other nutritious foods. We want to keep everything on a level playing field. One of the things I see parents do sometimes is make their kid earn sweets or earn treats. They want their children to earn their sweet foods. And that might be, from a behavioral standpoint. So they want a certain behavior. Oftentimes, we attach it as a pediatric dietitian. I might attach it to eating behavior. So eat your vegetables, clean your plate, take another bite, try this new food. But it could be other behaviors too. Be good at the dentist's. Be good at the doctor's office. Get an A on your report card. So sometimes we use sweets as rewards or incentives to manipulate or increase certain behaviors we want to see out of our children. I don't think that's a good thing to do either. I don't think that we should be encouraging our children to earn their sweets. Again, when we do that, we're elevating sweets in the hierarchy of food, and we really want to keep sweets on the playing field. We want all foods to be neutral psychologically. The ultimate goal, honestly, is developing and helping your child develop a healthy relationship with sweets and treats and desserts and other sugary foods. That relationship where your child can engage with sweets and treats and enjoy them, but your child can also say, I'm not hungry right now, and walk away or walk by those foods. Or ultimately, as your child gets older, to be able to say, you know what, I can self-reflect here and see that I have had a lot of sweets this week, and so I'm going to dial it back, and I'm going to have other foods that are good for my body. So a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old isn't going to have that sort of mental capacity to make those management decisions about their diet, but that's what we're working towards, because an adolescent certainly can have the mental capacity, the cognitive ability to make those balances in their diet. So I have worked hard to be neutral around candy and other sweets in front of my kids, because I didn't tell you the story about my mom's having a regular stash of peanut M&Ms in her lingerie drawer, which I used to sneak back into her room and grab a handful on the daily. So, hiding sweets and treats, restricting them, making them scarce, having a disturbed relationship yourself with sweets and treats, or an unhealthy relationship with them, this will all trickle down to your child's developing relationship with sweets and treats. So, as I said, I've worked hard to get my own relationship with sweets and treats in place, and in a place that is livable for myself. It's interesting. The other day, I told my kids I was doing this podcast topic, and one of my daughters shouted out, and I have to quote her. She's like, "You definitely have a sweet tooth, Mom." And that was true. My whole family knows I do have a sweet tooth. However, I have tried very consciously to put sweets and treats in their place in this home for my family, to be neutral around them, to have them show up regularly, to fully enjoy them when we do have them. You might be surprised to know, as a registered dietitian, that I almost always have ice cream in my freezer, a candy dish in my dining room that's full of candy, and I do bake sweets and buy treats. My own stuff with sweets is always in flux. There are times when I'm feeling like I haven't had candy in a long time and I really want some, and I'll go get some, but that satisfies me for a while. Restriction, scarcity does not work. It's not a long-term solution, particularly if you're wanting to help your child develop a healthy relationship with these foods. I think and hope that this approach will help you remove any sort of forbidden aura that you might have around sweets and treats and candy in your home. Making them available also means you need to work harder to model food balance throughout your meals and your snacks, and use that structure I talk a lot about in those boundaries with eating. Putting that all together really can help you solidify your approach to a healthy diet in general. So for my kids, candy doesn't seem to be laden with other feelings like scarcity or restriction or emotional responses. They enjoy their sweets and they eat them or not. There have been times where, birthday cake, we serve birthday cake and my family members will have a small slice, and then that'll be it. They don't really want any more. And I've tossed out cake before because it doesn't get eaten. So I think the good news is, for me anyways, I've come a long way in my relationship with candy, sweets, and treats. I understand my history with them. I understand my responsiveness to them because I've reflected on that and I've looked back. But truth is, I still love candy, and that's okay. I don't think that's ever going to change. So what my hope for you is that you can recognize maybe your own history with sweets. And if you don't have a history with sweets, good on you. But recognize how you're handling them in your home. If you are creating restriction or scarcity or a hierarchy that elevates sweets over other foods, recognizing that will help you get back to normalizing them in your home, neutralizing them, and really working towards that healthy relationship with food. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Again, you can find the show notes over at jillcastle.com/123. That's 123 for episode number 123. I'll include the link to the article in U.S. News & World Report, as well as some other links I have for you. Specifically, I'm thinking about episode number 16, where I interviewed Julie Duffy Dillon on developing your child's relationship with food. I have articles on how to manage your child's sugar cravings and what is a healthy relationship with food. And then last, again, you can sign up for my newsletter, The Munch. I'll include a link there. And also, I have classes and workshops and guidebooks over on my website, thenourishchild.com, where you can get further education and even participate in some group classes that I run periodically throughout the year that really ties all of this together. I think one of the challenges can be, you get this little piece of information here and you get that little piece of information there. Bringing it all together is really where the power is. And that's what I do in my courses, like the Nourish Child Blueprint, for example. So anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful week. It is November. We are creeping up to Thanksgiving. We have much to be thankful for. I hope that you all can give the child or children in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourish Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.